have something to confess to you. If you get uncomfortable with feet, trigger warning. Page 20, I'm already getting emotional. Oh. Hi everyone, it's me. Welcome to today's video. We are doing another episode of TBR Takedown because I have something to confess to you. Remember when we were doing so well with reading down the physical TBR? I was getting that number down. We started at 101 books on the physical TBR at the beginning of last year. And then at the beginning of this year, when I did a full recount, it was around, what was it, like 45 books-ish? I remember being so proud of that progress because my final goal is to read down my physical TBR to 35 books. I really like that number for a good balance of still really having a wide selection of books to read at home, but also like it doesn't feel overwhelming and it doesn't feel like you're just, bogged down with books to read. Well, I need to confess to you that my physical TBR is now 60. I feel like it's been a really long time since I have made backwards progress or erased my progress with this TBR Takedown reading challenge that I've instilled upon myself. But my birthday happened where I received a lot of books. I did buy a few books for myself around my birthday, but I did receive a lot of birthday book gifts. And then I also just recently feel like I've been receiving a lot of books from publishers, which is a great thing, but also adds to my physical TBR. So just with a whole bunch of factors where I have been receiving books from multiple sources, the physical TBR has grown. So we are reinstating our TBR Takedown vlogs for the time being to help us get our TBR down at least back to 45, at least back down to what I had it at the beginning of this year. So we're just gonna read the physical TBR this week. Nothing too complicated. We're just gonna pick up books and we're gonna read them. Now, with that being said, I am definitely going to prioritize my March TBR in this reading vlog. So these are the books I have remaining on the March TBR. I've actually only read 1 out of the 5 books chosen so far, which is very unlike me because I usually read my physical TBR within the first 2 weeks of the month. But I feel like with just some of the fun reading vlogs we've done this month with reading series and starting new series, these books on the monthly TBR just weren't valid to include in those ones. So we're gonna hunker down and focus on these, which is actually a great thing because I feel like I am very much in the mood to read these ones. I think we're actually gonna start with Lady Tan's Circle of Women by Lisa C. I have been really excited to dive into this one. It's a historical fiction. It's set in 1500s China and we follow a protagonist and she has a passion for medicine and healing. She loves helping people. She loves studying in this area, but she finds herself put into an arranged marriage and her new family that she's married into has very traditional views and they just don't believe that she as a wife should be pursuing this career in medicine. They would much rather her just stay at home, do her duties as a wife at home, and that's basically it. That's their image of a perfect wife. And so she has to navigate this, try and figure out how to continue studying and pursuing her passion while also not completely offending this family she's married into, because obviously she also doesn't want to make life difficult and cut ties with her new family and all that. And from what I've heard, this is definitely a story that highlights female strength, also female friendships, and so I'm really excited. I feel like I'm gonna love this one. I feel like this is just a given at this point that this is going to be an incredible read for me. It has all my favorite elements with female characters that are strong, trying to pursue their dreams, and then also it seems like we're gonna have a lot of good friendships, possibly a found family. Yeah, I'm excited to dive in, so this is the first book we're gonna tackle. Yeah, I thought I was gonna love this book and I am definitely loving this book so far. I'm only about a quarter way through, but I did just get to part 2, so I thought it was a good time to give you an update. I have a feeling this book is going to actually be split into 4 parts because right at the beginning of it, we learn about the 4 stages, the 4 supposed stages of a woman's life. The first phase is called the milk days or something like that, and that's when you are a young child, growing up learning things, and then you move on to the hairpinning days, and that's when you are trying to marry, find a husband, like get ready for all of that. And then we have 2 more phases. So we basically have like the phase of being a mother, and then we have the phase of being a widow essentially. But we are following our protagonist as she goes through all of these stages, and I feel like I love stories like this when you meet your protagonist at a young age and you truly like grow up with them and see what they've gone through. I feel like I'm always just able to connect to characters in such like a more soul deep way when you follow them from when they're a young child, because you see what they learned like at their most susceptible age. Is that the right word for it? You know what I mean, like at that age when you are being molded into who you are going to be, when you actually see that happening and then you see how that affects their choices when you grow up. It just hits so much harder that way. I love stories like this that follow through an entire lifespan. But yeah, I love this so far. From the very beginning, we had a preface at the front of this book that basically mentioned how women's health is so different to men's health, and there can be a lot more complications because our bodies are different. We give birth, we bleed, we do all of these things, and so therefore our bodies need to be treated in a different way and like diagnosed in different ways. So that just set the tone for this entire book. And then yeah, so far in the story, we're still pretty young with our protagonist. I just finished phase 1 where she's like 8 years old, but already we have set the scene of 1500s China, where women were so controlled and so restricted in what they were allowed to do and what they were allowed to learn, but at the same time there were so many expectations from them. I mean, like, first of all, beauty expectations that are absolutely horrific. Oh, the things that these women were doing to their bodies to make them attractive for men is like actually very painful to think about. Like, they had to bind their feet, like literally rearrange the bones in their feet so they would have like these like small delicate pointy feet, but because they like broke their feet essentially, they weren't able to walk properly. Just a lot of things like that. And on top of that, they're expected to do so many things, taking care of the home, and they're expected to also have somewhat of an education, because when they have children they need to be able to like give lessons and teach their children, but at the same time they're not allowed to use that knowledge that they've learned in practical ways. There's a lot that's going on even like within these families, because our protagonist is born into a pretty like rich elite status family, and within these families there is like even more hierarchy, where we have wives versus concubines, and then with concubines they have like their own different ranks, and with wives it depends on like which birth order you marry into, like which sibling of the family you marry into is like where you will be placed and how you will be treated. I feel like this is historical fiction at its best, where we do actually explore a lot of historical facts and like what it actually was like to live in that time, but we're also, it doesn't feel like a textbook. We're learning all of this through a story. I really like the writing style as well. It does feel like storytelling. Like, it feels like someone is telling a story into your ears when you are reading this one. So I do tend to love that writing style, especially in a historical fiction. So I really like it. I really like this so far. It's horrifying. There's a lot of parts that I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so sad, but I can see where the story is going and I'm excited to see where it goes. So I'm gonna continue to read part 2 and part 3 and part 4 and I think this is gonna be amazing. I'm 220 pages in. I have about 100 pages left in this one. So let's do one more update before I finish this book. I am still really loving it. I will say though, if you get uncomfortable with feet, trigger warning. Just leaving that there. With the element of feet binding that I kind of mentioned a little bit previously, we do have that mentioned in like some detail with like some pain involved, and I personally don't like talking about toes or thinking about like when toes go in the wrong direction that they're not supposed to go in and stuff. So those parts are making me feel a little bit uncomfortable. So like just be aware, because that's a trigger that like I knew I had in life, but I never have experienced it in a book like this. So it's a new reading trigger that I've experienced for myself. But apart from that, I am still so invested in the story. We have so many different female characters in this book going through so many different things, but all affected by just like the world, seeing the different ways they're limited and restricted, but they're trying to push the boundaries kind of like in their own ways, or at least like trying to do the best for themselves that they can with all these restrictions that have been placed on them. Story is definitely still very intriguing, and then I am just so impressed at the amount of research that's gone into this book. Like the level of detail we are going in with the medicine and how you diagnose things, how you treat people, I feel like is just so detailed. I definitely get the impression that Lisa C did so much research before reading this one. But yeah, as I mentioned, with all the information we're getting, it doesn't feel overwhelming. It doesn't feel like a textbook. We're still getting a really good emotional story, like a human story. So I'm still loving this, apart from the feet stuff. But I'm probably gonna finish this book tonight, maybe, we'll see. But all good things, mostly good things, 99% good things, 1% feet bad. Yep, this is a 5-star read. This is a full 5-star read. I finished it last night in bed, and it's just such a beautiful, all-encompassing story. One of the coolest things about this book too is that it is based on a real person. Like Lady Tan was an actual physicist, or physicist? Not physicist. Why did I say that? She was an actual physician who lived in the Ming Dynasty, and a lot of the accounts in this book are based off of these journals, these medical journals that were found. And I think while the story definitely takes its creative liberty in terms of some parts of her life, I've been looking her up, like I've read up her Wikipedia page at this point, and there are definitely some differences. There's actually a lot in this book that is actually based on her accounts, and like especially the medical stuff and the cases that she treated are based on things that were found in her own medical journals, and I feel like that is just so cool. Also because like as I was reading this book, it feels like an epic story in a way, but it also feels so realistic. Like the things that our characters are going through, they're not really trying to play the hero or whatever. It's just like a very realistic story and a good depiction of what it was like to be a woman in this time. I just feel like the fact that it was so based in real life and was so based in Lady Tan's actual life, like that's what gave this book that really realistic feeling while reading it. And I love that the story also like wasn't just about our protagonist. We saw the arcs of a lot of these different women who were coming from different walks of life, who had different priorities and different ways of reacting to the restrictions, and some of them like you could kind of see would clash with each other because they didn't handle things the same way, but in the end I feel like they all just had such a deep understanding with each other, like a deep core understanding, and that really came through in the text. And there were just like so many quotable lines in this book. So many just hard-hitting, strong lines that you read and you're just like, oh, you know, those lines that just like make their way through your entire body. Oh, this was so good. This is a 5-star read. It's so good. I'm so excited to dive more into Lisa C's books. I actually have an arc of her next publish on my physical TBR. I was sent it by Simon & Schuster, and I'm really excited to dive into that one now because I know that I love her writing. This was incredible. But yes, there is like a little bit of a foot trigger type thing, like a foot, bone, toes trigger. If you're not comfortable with that stuff, I feel like you might be fine reading this book, but my mistake was that I went on Google and I looked up photos of foot binding, because from the way it was described in the book, I was like, how is this possible? What are they doing? And then I just had to see it visually for myself, so I looked up photos, and that was my biggest mistake, because once I saw the horrific shapes that these feet are yeah, we're gonna stop talking about foot binding now. But while on one hand I do kind of regret looking up the photos because it made me uncomfortable every time foot binding was mentioned again in the story, I kind of am glad I did, because then it gave me just an even more like visceral feeling while reading the book, knowing the pain that these women were going through. And not even women, like girls, like young girls were going through this pain at such an early age to like mold their feet into a different shape. Oh, anyways, let's dive into our next read. I'm gonna do another real world book, and that is actually This Book Made Me Think of You by Libby Page. This one I've heard is gonna be a little bit of an emotional one. This one is a contemporary fiction. I think it's slightly romantic. We follow our protagonist Tilly, who has lost her husband a couple months ago. She ends up finding out that her husband, before his death, actually planned out these book gifts plus letters to her. So essentially for the next year, once a month, she is going to receive one book and one letter from him, and this was his way of just trying to ease her through this transition of life, like living life without him. And so I think we just go through this year, see how she handles her grief and goes through that journey alongside these books and letters that her husband has sent her to like basically help her continue on without him in life. And I feel like this book is gonna make me cry, but it sounds like such a beautiful concept, so I am really excited to read this one. I've also never read this author before, so we love discovering so many new authors. I'm gonna dive into this one next. I'm already getting emotional. This does not bode well for us. Oh no. We're at the 100-page mark. I feel like the best way to describe my experience reading this book is gentle crying. I swear every 20 pages I will break out into these kind of just gentle tears, like very gentle emotions, but definitely deep emotions. And those moments are interspersed between this book just being like cozy book and cat vibes, because we do spend a lot of time talking about books, obviously, but also we go to bookish places, like we visit bookstores, there are libraries, there are just like book related activities and environments that we visit throughout the story. So this is definitely one for the book lovers, but then there's also just this love for cats embedded into this book too. There was a quote comparing book lovers to cats and how we are just the same, and I'm like, yeah, you know what, you're probably right. That's probably why I get along with my cats so well. But that's basically the vibe of this book. And then yeah, amongst those cozy vibes, we get these emotionally impactful moments. Like every month that passes, we'll get another letter from the husband, and then I'll start tearing up again. And we're also getting these little flashback moments that will come full circle, and all of that is paralleled with our protagonist's slow journey of just managing her grief and healing very gently in very small steps, really, really slowly trying to find just the simple joys in life again. And I think simple is also a good way to describe this book. It's very simplistic in terms of the writing style, but also the storytelling and what's going on. It's one of those books where everything happens very conveniently. Like there's nothing that happens that isn't carefully crafted and curated for the story. There's nothing extra. Everything that happens just feels so convenient, like it was meant to be. That's what the universe is trying to tell you. You know, it's very simplistic. It feels like everything is just falling into place, into like this perfectly well-crafted puzzle. But I honestly don't mind it, especially in this context. I think it really, really works because it's just the type of book that wants to feel good. But I'm gonna continue reading. I'm gonna continue to gently tear up every 20 pages or so. I feel like I'm gonna read this one pretty fast. Like it's going by pretty quick. I do need to give you one last little update before I finish this book. I have been just gobbling it up today. As I mentioned, it's really easy to read. I will say though, I haven't been getting as emotional, like those little emotional moments that I was feeling at the start of this book, I feel like haven't really been hitting throughout the middle portion, because I will say some of the things we're doing are feeling a little repetitive, are feeling a little rinse and repeat. I just think with the books we're getting and the letters we're getting at this point, we're getting one a month, and I feel like they're all just sort of the same but a little bit different, and I just wish there was a little more variety in them. Like, I get what they're all trying to do. They are all trying to give our main character like one more step in the process of finding herself and finding joy again, but it's just feeling a lot of the same. I'm wondering almost even if some of the months could have been skipped over or like montaged together into a shorter section, because they do add a little something, but I'm not sure if they add enough to warrant like a whole section of the book. But it's still an easy read. I still like the overall story, and I'm actually getting to the last 2 months now, and I'm expecting the last month to hit really hard, because that's going to be like the last book and the last letter. So I'm just really curious to see how this one ends. I'm curious to see how the final one will differ from like all of these middling ones that have kind of like mushed together in a blur. But those are my thoughts. I have about, I think it's like 70 pages left, and we'll see what happens. Overall, this book feels like a mix between P.S. I Love You and Eat, Pray, Love. We'll see how this finishes up. Okay, so I'm gonna be honest, the ending of this was cute. It didn't hit me as hard as I thought it would, or it didn't hit me as hard as I expected it to hit me. I don't know, maybe I was just like hyping myself up internally and emotionally to have this really like intense ending, this drop off of the book, but I feel like the ending was cute. It was wholesome. It was a good ending that I'm happy with, but I was expecting to feel some very strong emotions, and instead I just felt very gentle emotions, which again, we're bringing back the theme of the book is just gentle. I just thought it'd be a little bit more dramatic, but it was just a little bit more of like a nice tender send-off, which can be good as well, because now I just feel all warm and fuzzy inside. So definitely a softer reading experience than I was imagining this to be. I think the beginning of this book was definitely the most emotional for me, and then as it went on, it just got a little bit mundane, I think. So I think in terms of rating this book, I'm a little bit torn, because I don't think it's a full 4-star for me, but I also feel like 3.75 feels too low. So I'm gonna give it like something really annoying, like a 3.9 or something, but I guess that's gonna round up to a 4-star for just like star rating purposes. But like in my mind, this is somewhere between a 3.75 and a 4, but those ratings don't exist on like book review platforms. Definitely an easy, quick read, as I mentioned. I started this book this morning and I'm finishing it this like late afternoon, early evening. So I mean, it was good. It was a solid book. Next TBR book that I'm gonna read, I'm gonna grab Agnes Aubert's Mystical Cat Shelter by Heather Fawcett. This is a cozy fantasy with a romantic subplot, I think, about a woman who runs a cat rescue in 1920s Montreal, and her grumpy landlord, who I think is tied into kind of darker magic stuff. I'll give you a better synopsis once I actually dive into this one, but I think this one is just going to be really, really cozy. There's lots of cats. Look at the cover. How many cats are there? Actually, let's count the cats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Is that 1 cat or 2 cats? There are at least 15 cats on this cover. I want to say there's probably more. I feel like this is one of those things where like the more you continue to stare at it, the more cats will appear, but there are at least 15 cats on this cover. So I'm gonna get into this, and I've never actually read a book set in 1920s Montreal, so I feel like that's gonna be a really fun setting to be in. Let's dive into this one. Don't mind my appearance. It's the weekend, it's chores day, so this is my current state, but I am at around 100 pages in Agnes Aubert's Mystical Cat Shelter, so I thought I'd give you a little reading update. I'm really liking this so far. It's really, really cute. So for a clearer synopsis, in this one, we essentially follow Agnes, of course, and at the beginning of the story, she is looking for a new place to rent to have her cat rescue in, because at her previous place, or her current place, there was a big disaster that happened with this like magician's duel accident accident disaster, and basically there was a lot of physical damage caused on the street and to the building that housed her cat shelter, and so she just has to move. So she is looking for a new place to rent, but a lot of landlords are really picky about like having pets, and like not only having one cat, but she has 48 cats at the start of this book, so she's having a hard time trying to find a landlord that will actually like accept her as a renter. But she happens to come across this one kind of place that has a cloud of mystery over it. It seems to be quite a nice place, but it's listed for a price that is suspiciously cheap. But Agnes at this point just has like, she doesn't have any other options, so she decides to rent this new kind of like weird mysterious place. She settles in. All seems to be okay, except for the fact that there are these kind of weird feeling people walking into the cat rescue and just disappearing, like going through the back door and then just not being there anymore. But she's just like, you know what? I got this place for cheap. I'm gonna let it go on. I have to stay here. I refuse to accept that there's anything weird going on in this place that I've just rented. But things get weirder and weirder, and Agnes finally realizes that the landlord that has rented this place to her is actually sharing the space with her, and he is a magician, and he's been using a part of this building for this illegal magic shop thing, and he's actually been using her charity, her cat rescue, as a front. And so after this realization, a lot of dramatic things happen and chaos unfolds. I'm really liking this. It definitely has a cozy vibe. I'm actually really liking as we meet the cats, because we are actually getting cat names, like specific cat stories. I'm actually matching the cat to the cat on the cover, and I'm finding that they actually are all on the cover, and it's really fun just seeing the visual of the cats that are mentioned and seeing what they actually look like. It's really fun. I also, as I was looking for the cats, noticed that on the corner of this cover, those are the Emily Wilde books on the shelf. Just a fun little Easter egg there. There is the Encyclopedia of Fairies, the Map of the Otherlands, and the Compendium of Lost Tales all on the cover. That is just so cute. I love that little detail. But yeah, I definitely like the cattiness to this whole story. It's also funny. The banter between our protagonist and the landlord is actually really, really funny. I like it. And the story overall, it's kind of feeling Howl's Moving Castle. The landlord seems very Howl-ish to me, in the sense that he is this very powerful magician, very, very well known. And when you meet him, there's no doubt that he knows how powerful he is, and he knows he's this like mysterious wizard, sorcerer, magician, or whatever. But he also kind of has this just sassy side. He's very particular about liking having things the way they are. And then fun little detail, he's actually also allergic to cats, which just adds another fun like layer of humor to this whole situation. I feel like this is just going to be a wonderful vibe. I am loving the Montreal setting. I think that's working really, really well. And it's actually making me want to go visit Montreal again, because I haven't been since I was a lot younger, and I just feel like I want to go and like appreciate more of the city now that I'm an adult and can actually like appreciate things a little bit more. So yeah, road trip to Montreal might be necessary at some point. I actually finished this book yesterday. I actually got so much productive reading done yesterday because we did a reading sprint with Freya over on the podcast, and that was just honestly a game changer. I feel like we need to do reading sprints more, but yeah, I did finish this yesterday. Overall, I definitely enjoyed it. I would recommend this book if you are looking for something cozy to read, if you're looking for something easy to read, and also if you really, really love cats, and if you also really love Howl's Moving Castle, because even as the story went on, I was getting more elements of Howl's Moving Castle embedded into here. I think Heather Fawcett also just really knows cats very well, because sometimes, you know, this is one of my pet peeves, especially when I'm watching movies, is when there will be a cat in the movie and it will be just like a very stereotypical cat, but not a very accurate cat. You know, it's like you see the cat on screen and then you hear that really fake cat noise and you're like, that's not how a cat would act. That's not what a cat does. I don't know why. That is one of my biggest pet peeves, when cats are portrayed inaccurately on screen. But I will say the cats in this were very true to how cats actually are. Like, we had so many cats with different characteristics and peculiarities, and all of their little quirks are quirks that I have seen in like my own cats. So that was actually really, really fun to read about. And so vibes were immaculate in this, but I will say something that brought this book down overall for me was the end, like the kind of high drama, high action part at the end, because this book went from 0 to 100. Throughout 90% of this book, I would say we were just very calm, very cozy. Like, yes, there was plot happening. We were investigating into this sort of like weird thing that was going on, but for the most part, the story was very day to day, almost mundane, just slice of life as a cat rescue owner who loved chocolate pastries. Like, we were taking care of cats, we were eating chocolate pastries, we were organizing things. It was all very just like regular, very chill. But then all of a sudden, it just went to 100, and it didn't gradually go to 100, it just like switched. And so that took me out of it a little bit. And it was one of those books where it's cozy all the way through, but then the very ending feels like a complete different genre. It kind of felt like that. But something else that went from 0 to 100 in this book that I actually liked was the romance. The romance in this was so absurd and ridiculous and out of nowhere, but for some reason I liked it in this context because it really fit our characters very well. They were both kind of bumbling and awkward whenever they interacted with one another, but it was so entertaining to read them interacting with each other and like not really knowing how to navigate each other's quirks. And I think because of that dynamic between them, the 0 to 100 in their romance made sense. Like, the out of nowhere made sense to me, and I actually really enjoyed it. I liked their weird banter with each other. I honestly think I like them better than Emily and Wendell from the Encyclopedia Fairies, which I think might be an unpopular opinion, but I really liked their absurd romance build-up or non-build-up in this. I don't know, it really fit their personal characters. And there's just something so entertaining to me about reading two characters that are just awkward. So I enjoy this. I think overall it was almost a 4-star read. Like, as I was reading through, it was a 4-star for 90% of the book, and then that very ending brought it down for me. So I think I'm gonna give this a 3.75 overall, but I did enjoy this. I would recommend it. It was just a cozy, fun cat time. But that being said, we did make a good little dent in the physical TBR, so I think we did a great job this week. The one book remaining on my monthly TBR for March actually is The Elsewhere Express by Samantha Soto Yambao, which I am going to pick up next. I'm going to read this off camera, but I will let you know how this one goes in my end of month reading wrap up. And that being said, I am going to leave you guys here for now. So I hope you enjoyed this reading vlog. If you did, please leave me a like and a comment. If you don't know what to comment down below, let me know how many books you have on your physical TBR. Let's whittle them down together. If you like me, subscribe, do that bell thing, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!